Hi there. My name is Gracia Anderson. Thank you for coming to my capstone presentation. If a bathtub is overflowing with water, the first thing that you do is stop the running water. This is very similar to how we must address our plastic pollution problem. We must stop production at the source. For my internship, I worked with Environment Washington on the Rewrap Act, or House Bill 2049. This worked to implement extended producer responsibility recycling programs that would incentivize producers to create more sustainable packaging by having them pay for the costs of their products. I worked with a variety of different stakeholders to educate them about EPR, and I also specifically worked with youth, where I identified that youth are particularly fearful of environmental impacts. However, they are unsure how to address these impacts. I also noticed that in EPR discourse, youth tend to be left out. So I centered my research around how we can engage them with EPR policies. If we just zoom in right here to the background, we can start with some statistics. Only 17% of recycling in Washington is actually recycled, while the remainder is either landfilled or incinerated. This is where extended producer responsibility comes in. It offers a solution by increasing recycling rates and incentivizing sustainable packaging. However, while there have been a bunch of case analyses on how stakeholders can influence EPR, none of them have identified youth as their own stakeholder group. This is where I saw a need to engage youth as agents of change and identify how they uniquely can influence other stakeholder groups. This brings me to my research question. What are the best practices for engaging youth with complex waste policies, and how can their involvement influence other stakeholder groups? For my internship, I worked at Environment Washington, and I utilized social media and events to increase youth engagement. I also created a literature review on youth involvement in environmental policy campaigns, and I conducted an online survey of youth involved with our campaign through social media and events. Some of my key findings start with, from my literature review, I realized that young people trust science and their peers, and they distrust media and government. As we can see in Figure 2, there's a lot of trust for scientific research, and then their peers and neighbors, while there's also a significant amount of distrust in major news outlets and state government. With our campaign attendees, the majority became engaged through their school groups and friends and family. I also identified that surveyed youth reported having more enthusiasm for in-person events. And during hearings and meetings, officials and chairs directed conversations and questions towards youth. This is where I created a key system that helped with the success of our campaign. Elected officials often express importance and appreciation hearing from youth about policies. The most effective method for increased engagement in youth is by hosting in-person events. So, by engaging the two groups through in-person events, this would garner the most attention and support for our campaign. Finally, I found that youth were 66% more likely to share Instagram posts that highlighted the positive impacts of extended producer responsibility and their actions. This all brings me to the best practices that I found. The first practice that I found vital was cross-organizational collaboration. The majority of youth groups were invited to our campaign events. However, there was lack of representation in leadership and planning. By partnering with these student groups, there could be increased numbers at events. Additionally, hands-on engagement. Youth are tired of having online event after online event. In-person events for youth were able to allow them to engage with the community and establish ongoing communications, which can help with the distrust that they have for government. Finally, hopeful language. Implementing language that shows past progress and future improvements helps keep positivity and move momentum throughout the campaign. The significance of my findings is that as we continue to create waste, youth will suffer the most, and more leaders will be needed for future campaigns. Additionally, my results show that through effective messaging and events, we can increase the likelihood of future youth advocacy. And then finally, I would like to note that more research is needed on increasing initial youth engagement, as my research focused on those that were already engaged with our campaign. I would like to thank my site supervisor, Pam Clow, my faculty advisor, John Myers, and my friends and family for supporting me throughout this journey.